Hi guys, we're continuing talking about Shakespeare and notating a monologue with Scansion. So I'm going to be working from Hamlet's soliloquy. So the very first thing I want to do is show you guys how to mark where in Shakespeare you find your monologue. So the title obviously is Hamlet. And then the way we notate Shakespeare is first you put the act. And you write that act in capital Roman numerals, okay? And then once you've written the act, you put a little period to separate it, and then you're going to put the scene, and you're going to put that scene number in lowercase Roman numerals, which it's scene 1, so that'll be a lowercase I, and then another period. And then using our normal 0 through 9 digits, you're going to write which lines they are. So this line starts on line 50, or this monologue starts on line 57, and it runs all the way through 91. Okay? So that's how you write out a Shakespeare notation. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're doing is what's called scansion. So if you guys remember what we talked about yesterday, scansion is the way to mark, how we mark the metrical, so meaning patterns of the meter, metrical patterns of a line of poetry. Okay, so what is meter then? Well, meter is the way we define the number of feet. Well, what's a foot? What are feet? We're not talking about the things you walk on. We're talking about within poetry. And that's a group typically of 2 or 3 syllables. And so each poem in Shakespeare is made up of these groups of syllables that we call feet. And those feet make up the meter, and talking about the meter is called scansion. So to scan a poem is to talk about all of the meter and mark it all out on paper. Okay? So let's go ahead and break this up into syllables first of all. So remember, you count out syllables. You can kind of, I usually tap my hand on the table. You can clap out syllables, whatever you need to do. So all we're going to do to mark a foot is we're going to put a long vertical line. Okay, so to be or not to be, that is the question, right? So we've got a little extra baby 1 syllable here. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, right? So we keep ending, we see consistency, we're ending with these little extra baby syllables on the end, okay? All right, I'm just going to stop there for this example, and we'll go from there. So when we mark out syllables, there's 2 options. There's unstressed and there's stressed. Right? So we mark out unstressed syllables with what's called a breve. And a breve is this little smiley face, and that goes to unstressed. Woo! Unstressed syllables. Right? And you can kind of remember that the breve goes to the and I did this messily because it's supposed to work, because the UN just looks like a breve right side up and then upside down, right? So this looks like, if you put one upside down next to a breve, it looks like unstressed, okay? For a stressed syllable, we're going to use what's called an ictus. An ictus is just a vertical or a diagonal line, and that's for stressed, okay? Okay, so we have our breve and our ictus, and that's how we're going to mark things out. So I like to always start by just putting the ictuses, icti, don't know how to pluralize that, in there, all of the stressed syllables first. So to be or not to be, that is the question, is probably how I would mark that, right? How do you tell what's stressed and unstressed? You need to say it out loud. If you're not sure, you have to say it out loud multiple times and try it different ways to see if it sounds right. So to be or not to be sounds weird, right? So we wouldn't put the emphasis on the first of those syllables in each foot. We'd put it on the second one. And so then that means that we're going to put in brevs on our first syllables. And these little last ones at the end are going to be brevs as well, unstressed typically. And then we can count out that each of these feet, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet, not including the one single one over here. So that means since there's 5 feet in a line, 5 being the root word of penta, that's 5 feet. So pentameter means that our poem's lines each have 5 feet. And since it's all unstressed, stressed, that's what's called an iamb. An iamb is a pattern, a 2-syllable foot that is unstressed, stressed, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and do this next line. Weather. So this one I would probably put stressed weather. 'Tis nobler in the mind to suffer. So other than that, it's going to be the same. So we have one odd foot at the beginning and one little half foot at the end. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, right? So that would be how I would mark all of those things out, okay? So those are going to be your big things that you need to know in order to be able to mark all this out. Now there is room for argument. You can change these things based on your interpretation of the script, but keep in mind that sometimes there's a stronger choice, right? So it might not be wrong, but there's probably a more right choice. The other thing I want to talk about is this is what I called a soliloquy. And so we'll see the words soliloquy and monologue used a lot. They're, not interchangeable. A soliloquy is a long speech to the character's own self. That's the key word. So a soliloquy is a speech to yourself, whereas a monologue is a speech to others. Okay? So in this instance, we're talking about a soliloquy, and that's the speech to self. Okay? All right, you guys. Using this video, you can go ahead and complete the worksheet that I will send to you.